Yo, what's up you guys? Welcome back to Second Take. It's Vishwa here, and today we're going to be discussing one of the most disappointing teams of recent NBA history, the Utah Jazz, and what went wrong for the team, not just last season, but the seasons prior as well. A lot of NBA fans would know that on paper, the Jazz team of this year was actually a championship caliber roster, as they didn't appear to have any holes. But what the fans also knew was that the team in reality was simply just suited for the regular season and would not accomplish anything in the playoffs. There has to be a reason why the Utah Jazz have never been able to flourish in the postseason, and that's where in today's video I'll be examining the cause of the downfall of the Utah Jazz, taking several factors into account such as a team's recent history, current roster, and individual player performances. So without delay, please make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I promise you will not regret it, and let's get straight into the video. Firstly, we'll be covering the Utah Jazz's history dating back to the start of the Donovan Mitchell-Rudy Gobert era, which first started in 2017. So this is definitely after the Gordon Hayward era, and the team finished 5th in the Western Conference with a 48-34 record. The season featured the Jazz have a general starting lineup of Ricky Rubio at the 1, Donovan Mitchell at the 2, Joe Ingles at the 3, Derek Favors at the 4, and Rudy Gobert at the 5. Though injuries to both Gobert and Rubio would cause a lower seeded finish for the team, the Jazz were still a very good team. The team's promise was put on heavy display, especially in the first round of the playoffs, where the Jazz eliminated their higher seeded counterpart, the OKC Thunder, in 6 games. More importantly, the series featured rookie Donovan Mitchell single-handedly sending home the Thunder's big three of Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and Carmelo Anthony. Mitchell put on an absolute scoring clinic this series, averaging 28.5 points, 7 boards, and 3 assists, including an unreal 38 points in Game 6. Rudy Gobert also did his part, putting up 15 points, 11 boards, and 2 blocks. Even though Mitchell and the Jazz visibly struggled in the next series, losing in 5 games to the Houston Rockets, the promise and potential for the Jazz to make a deeper run in the playoffs in the future was definitely there. The following season featured the Jazz run it back with the same starting lineup after seeing this promise, but with a few bench additions of Jay Crowder and Alec Burks. Even though the team did marginally improve, finishing with a 50-32 record, they still finished as the 5th seed, but sadly got eliminated in the first round of the playoffs in 5 games to the Houston Rockets yet again. The youth and lack of experience from the Jazz was clearly showing, as they stood no match against James Harden and Chris Paul, 2 of the best in the game at the time with a heavy amount of experience in the big stage. Then came the 2019-20 season, where the Utah Jazz finally decided that it was time to make some serious changes and provide a much better supporting cast for Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. Firstly, the team traded key bench pieces of Jay Crowder, Grayson Allen, and others for a prominent point guard in Mike Conley. Then they signed a borderline star forward in Bojan Bogdanovic to a 4-year deal soon after. Two-way wing Royce O'Neal also improved his game to become one of the best 3-and-D players in the NBA. The team also bolstered their rotation at the trade deadline by acquiring dynamic scorer Jordan Clarkson to serve as their 6th man. Now even the Jazz finished as the 6th seed with a 44-28 record. This was not a clear depiction of their true abilities, because they were in fact only 2 games behind the 3rd seeded Denver Nuggets. These 2 teams would face off in the first round of the playoffs, but due to an injury, Bogdanovic was unable to play. Donovan Mitchell averaged an astounding 36 points a game, 5 boards, and 5 assists, shooting 52% from 3. Gobert also averaged 17 points and 11 boards. The team simply, however, failed to capitalize on a 3-1 series start by blowing that lead to ultimately lose 3 straight games, ultimately losing the series. The clear problems for Utah were exposed. Besides Mitchell, Clarkson, and Conley, the team had no offensive creation or shot making. I've also made a video on why Rudy Gobert might be overrated in the past, so be sure to check that out. But he was definitely a liability for Utah because he was limited offensively, and as the supposed defensive player of the year, he was unable to contain Nikola Jokic at all, and Jokic, along with Jamal Murray, ultimately carried Denver to the series win. Last year in the 2020-21 season, the Utah Jazz had a terrific 52-20 record and finished at the top of the conference. But did everyone care? Nope. I can guarantee you, not a single title contending team was scared of the Utah Jazz, because by then the team had already established themselves as playoff chokers that only do well in the regular season. After comfortably eliminating the Grizzlies in 5 games in the first round, the Jazz would fall to the Los Angeles Clippers in 6 games, even after starting the series 2-1, and the Clippers were playing without Paul George, their star player. In the series, Donovan Mitchell would continue to dominate, averaging 35 points, 5 boards, and 2 dimes, shooting 45% from 3. Gobert, however, averaged only 13 points and 12 boards. As a normal big man, these are pretty good stats, but having had the all-star label put on you, these stats are simply not close to good enough, especially when the Clippers were playing small ball, running 6'8" guys like Marcus Morris and Nicholas Batum at the 5. He averaged only 6 shot attempts attempts a game, and they were usually off of wide open dunks or putback shots. The rest of the supporting cast, consisting of Bojan Bogdanovic, Royce O'Neal, and Jordan Clarkson, were also inconsistent, having good games, then they could not make a shot in the next game. And it also didn't help that Mike Conley was injured for 5 out of the 6 games and didn't play well in Game 6 as well. The team was also unable to guard Paul George and Reggie Jackson, and head coach Tyronn Lue simply outcoached Quinn Snyder, and the Jazz were mentally defeated and didn't even make the last 4 games of the series close. And finally, this year, the Jazz finished 5th in the East with a 49-33 record, and as everyone expected, the team got bounced out of the first round yet again, losing in 6 games to the Dallas Mavericks. The team could not even take advantage of Luka Doncic being out for the first 3 games and let Jalen Brunson single-handedly defeat them. Donovan Mitchell had a terrible playoff outing, as even though he averaged 26 points a game, it was on 22 shots a game, and he shot less than 40% from the field and only 21% from 3. Rudy Gobert once again had a Mavs matchup with guys like Dwight Powell and Maxi Kleber guarding him, but yet again could not take advantage because he was too incapable offensively. But what was worse is even how bad Mike Conley was. Conley averaged a subpar 9 points a game on 33% shooting and 20% from 3. He had 3 games where he didn't even reach double figures and was even scoreless in Game 2. In Game 5, the team could not even reach 80 points for the game as they only had 77, and they got blown out in the process, and they ultimately ended up losing the series. Now that we have all these past seasons as evidence for the Jazz's excellent regular season showing but horrible playoff outings, the mystery question exists: why is the team never able to come close to winning a title, and what has caused their downfall? On paper, this team looks like they need everything to win a ring: a playmaking knockdown shooter in Mike Conley, a superstar scoring machine shooting guard Donovan Mitchell, a near all-star Bojan Bogdanovic, a solid 3-and-D wing in Royce O'Neal, and a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, Rudy Gobert, with a 6th Man of the Year scorer Jordan Clarkson and a playmaker in Joe Ingles off the bench. What could have possibly gone wrong? To address this question, teams that fail even when they have an on-paper super team usually do not have the best chemistry or aren't coached as well, and they don't have the playoff intensity needed or are simply just not as good as they appear to be. Now we'll take a look at some things to note that might have contributed to the downfall of the team. Now we'll ignore the first 2 Jazz seasons simply because Donovan Mitchell was in his first couple seasons and the new team was still taking time to adjust to each other, but the first event of a red flag was when Rudy Gobert pretty much shut down the NBA, causing the COVID hiatus due to his carelessness of following the health and safety protocols. Mitchell ultimately got COVID positive too and was not pleased with Gobert's actions. As he said, it took a while for him to cool off. Even though both of them did admit to being cool with each other, it was just a start to a possible range of issues both of them could have had in the future. Another huge thing to note is that in this season, Donovan Mitchell actually averages a mere 2 passes a game to Rudy Gobert. 2 passes. Mitchell also only passed the ball to Gobert a total of 151 times this season compared to all the other dynamic duos you see on the screen. Whether it's Mitchell not having the court vision or IQ to spot Gobert open, or him simply choosing not to pass to Gobert, if the guard to big man dynamic duo features only 2 passes from one another per game, something is obviously wrong, especially if your 2 stars do not have a good relationship. Both of them also have significant flaws in their games. Although Mitchell is seen as one of the best scorers in the game, he's an average 3-point shooter, not an effective playmaker, and is a net negative defender. And as for Gobert, like I said, I did explain heavily why he's overrated, but he legitimately seems like a player that's just really tall and has long arms, and to me, what he does on the court should be nothing short of expected. In addition, when guarding the premier big men in today's league, such as Jokic 2 years back in the playoffs, Joel Embiid, Karl Anthony Towns, among others, he always allows those guys to go off proving how overrated of a defender he is. Please check out that video if you want more specifics on him, but Gobert has also never managed to improve his offensive game much at all. He was always a passive and never took the ball up even with a smaller player on him, and his touch around the rim was extremely bad. In this year's playoffs, Game 1 featured him shooting the ball only 1 time. This sort of offensive production from your big man cannot be good if you want to win a championship. But to lay off the Gobert slander for a moment, the Utah Jazz would probably not even be a playoff team and maybe not even a play-in team without him. Without Gobert, the Utah Jazz have an all-time 14-21 losing record, and even with him on the floor, they have a 108 defensive rating, while without him, they have a significantly worse 115 defensive rating. In other words, the Jazz are one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA without Gobert, but are one of the best with him. The big reasons why are because besides Gobert and Royce O'Neal, the Jazz do not really have lockdown defense. Mitchell and Conley are both undersized in the backcourt and also have terrible defense. And the same goes for the other guys in Bojan Bogdanovic, Joe Ingles, and Jordan Clarkson. One more thing to note is how many leads the Utah Utah Jazz have blown throughout the Mitchell-Gobert tenure. The Jazz have blown a total of 16 double-digit leads this season, and 6 of those leads have actually been in the fourth quarter itself. The team blew double-digit leads to several marginally worse teams such as the Lakers, Magic, Spurs, Rockets, and the Pistons. They have also blew leads to contending teams like the Warriors, Bucks, and Suns. And as you see in this example here of the Jazz getting outscored 36-13 in a fourth quarter against the Suns, not only does the bad habit of blowing leads, several leads separate them as a tier lower than true contenders, but it also messes up their mental status. And currently, the Utah Jazz find themselves at rock bottom and would either go into a full-on rebuild or become just slightly worse, especially if they gave up Gobert. A good example of this situation is the OKC Thunder when they had a trio of Westbrook, Paul George, and Carmelo Anthony that failed miserably, and thus went to rebuild, getting rid of all 3 of these guys soon after this. Recognizing how bad this team has failed, head coach Quinn Snyder already resigned his position, and as of latest reports, there's a pretty high chance of Rudy Gobert getting dealt out this summer. As of first, he himself has been rumored to express the fact that it's either him or Donovan Mitchell in Utah, and he doesn't think that both of them can win a title in Utah, according to a private close source. Also, according to Jake Fisher, the Utah Jazz are not looking to move Donovan Mitchell at all, but the front office has been engaged in a lot of talks regarding Rudy Gobert. This definitely makes a lot of sense given the tensions that have been highlighted with Mitchell and Gobert in all their years. Gobert has an expensive contract and is 30 years old, while Mitchell is still only 25, and unless he demands a trade, Utah will likely look to rebuild solely on him. A lot of people would compare Mitchell's situation to Devin Booker with the Suns as well. Obviously, if Gobert's gone, the Jazz will become a 7th seed at best, and depending on who they acquire in return, as they lose a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year who anchors their defense, but the team should want to acquire as much draft capital and solid young players as possible. Some suitors would appear to be the Toronto Raptors, Phoenix Suns, Memphis Grizzlies, Charlotte Hornets, or Chicago Bulls, as all these teams would be in need of a big man. One trade example would include the Raptors giving up OG Anunoby, Gary Trent, and a future first-round pick for Gobert. If the Jazz can acquire solid young players like these two, plus some good draft compensation in other trades or this one, they can position themselves for a brighter future building around Donovan Mitchell. As the Chicago Bulls have also been linked to Gobert in several reports, another trade could possibly be Gobert to the Bulls for Nikola Vucevic, Kobe White, and a future first-round draft pick or another young player like Troy Brown. I won't go as much into depth as what the Jazz should do moving forward, simply because as the title shows, the video is mainly how the team experienced a downfall rather than a rebuild type of video. Overall, it's definitely sad that a small market team, the Utah Jazz, a team that appeared to have a championship blueprint, was not even close to achieving that goal. The team simply had a lot of holes in their system and chemistry and did not have the playoff intensity needed to contend at all. It also didn't help that the tension between their 2 stars affected the team performance too, and as they always had a strange habit of not holding on to a double-digit lead frequently. As a result, their prized head coach has stepped down. The team will likely blow up in the near future and rebuild. But anyway, let me know what your guys' thoughts on the downfall of the Utah Jazz are, and what else went wrong with the team, and how they can proceed going forward. And as always, smash that like button if you enjoyed, and remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you guys for watching, and peace.